When we're talking about the development of students with emotional and behavioural disabilities, one of the things we have to understand is how self-regulation works. So self-regulation is the ability to adjust your level of alertness. So when you are angry and you're really about to lose it, you have a really high level of alertness. If you have a neurotypical brain, you are able to adjust that level of alertness by doing things, by taking deep breaths, walking away, and calming down. If you have an emotional or behavioural disability, you have difficulties in adjusting your level of alertness. You have difficulties in bringing that level of alertness from being highly alert and angry and bringing it from that red zone down to a green or even a yellow zone. Alertness can also go the other way. It's not just about high level of alertness, it can also be low levels of alertness. If you have a neurotypical brain, when you're really tired, depressed, and sad, and you're in the blue zone, you can do things to move through those emotions and help to increase your alertness by doing things like exercising and eating healthy. But when you have clinical depression or clinical anxiety, you may have difficulties increasing your level of alertness. So when we talk about alertness, one of the words we use is state of arousal. Our level of arousal fluctuates through the day, from turning on the snooze button, which is a low point, to planning our day when we wake up, which might be a high point. Not only level of arousal, but the emotions attached with it. But there are emotions attached with it. So when we talk about zones of regulation as a strategy, just coming back to pictures, the zones are actually based on Australian traffic signs. So in Australia, the blue zone is the rest area. So that's when you've been driving a long period of time and you have a rest station where you need to stop, revive before you drive. And blue represents having a low level of alertness. So you are tired, you're sad, or you're sick. Green in Australia means go, which is a good level of alertness or a good level of arousal. Yellow is a triggered level of alertness. So in Australia, when you see the yellow light, that means you need to slow down. And because you're about to get to a red light, and red is a high level of alertness where you need to stop. So think of the red light in Australia means you need to stop. Now, what's really important is when we're talking about regulation, we're not just talking about anger. Alertness is about a lot of different emotions. You can be in the red zone if you are ecstatic or you are manic and you are just super happy and can't calm yourself down. If you have a student who gets into a place where they can't stop laughing, that is actually the red zone. If you have a student who is being rude and making rude noises like fart noises in the classroom, that could also be the red zone because they are not controlling their silliness. So red zone is not just anger, and self-regulation is not just about anger. It is about all kinds of different emotions. And when you're at a heightened state of alertness, that is when you are not in control. A heightened state of alertness could be extreme fear or extreme anxiety. So that is something that we have to learn, that students as they grow and as they develop, they will have different levels of being able to regulate their alertness. So self-regulation, as I talked about, can include a lot of things. So students with ADHD might have difficulties regulating their attention compared to other students. Students with manic depression might have issues regulating their excitement. Students with ASD might have troubles regulating their sensory needs. Students with conduct disorder might have issues regulating their silliness. Students with different disabilities will have issues with different types of regulation. And so zones is a strategy to help students as they grow up who have not learnt how to regulate themselves to regulate themselves. Because most students, neurotypical students who do not have a disability, usually have some level of being able to stop themselves from being silly, to stop themselves from being angry, or to stop themselves from not paying attention. So this is about teaching students who can't do that how to do that. So some useful terms when we're helping students with their regulation is dysregulation, which means a lack of regulation, means that students are not able to manage their own emotions. Then the second word is co-regulation, which means that that's an early step where students can't regulate all by themselves and they need a teacher to be able to help them. So a teacher might do co-regulation by doing explicit lessons, like teaching them how to read facial expressions or teaching them what a gesture is. Neurotypical students, as they develop, they learn these sorts of facial expressions and gestures quite naturally. But students, especially with autism, sometimes need to be actually taught how to read a facial expression and need to be taught what a gesture is, because they will get quite confused with what a facial expression or what a certain gesture means. Basically, co-regulation is being responsive to another state's and comforting them to help them regulate them better until they learn the strategies to do themselves. So as teachers, we need to help students by co-regulating with them so they can then develop self-regulation. Okay. When we're talking about students with disabilities, one of the things we have to understand is what causes dysregulation. It can be a variety of different things. For a lot of disabilities, there are problems with neurotransmitters and the brain activity. So I have attached some videos on Moodle called The Science of Disability. So there's one about the science of autism and the science of ADHD. And that explains how different chemical processes in the brain make it hard for certain people to be able to regulate their emotions. There's also problems with sensory events. So things like bright lights or loud noises can really make it hard for students with autism to regulate. There's also problems like history of trauma and adverse experiences. So if you've had a traumatic brain injury or if you've had post-traumatic stress, certain things can trigger an emotional response that can be very difficult to manage. So when it comes to causes of dysregulation, this image just shows a few different reasons that a student might dysregulate because of different things happening at home, different things happening with their brain.